So staying with the repercussions of the game at Old Trafford, Mo Salah used it as an opportunity to talk about his contract situation. The killer quote in his post-match interview was that everyone knew that this was going to be his last year at the club.
Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk are also out of contract at the end of the season, so Liverpool don't just have Salah to think about. Rob, let me pose this question to you. Are Liverpool interested in Mo Salah staying beyond the end of this season? And is Mo Salah himself interested in staying, or is this just a big game of chicken to start everyone talking about it?
Well, the game of chicken is interesting because just a bit of background on the interviews. Mo Salah doesn't do interviews. Everyone knows that. Journalists don't get to speak to him. Broadcasters rarely get to speak to him. He's done 2 broadcast interviews in the first 3 weeks of the season. He also did an interview after the Ipswich game. The company that were doing it were told no questions about his contract. You can ask about the game, but no questions about his future. 2 weeks later, he scores at Old Trafford. He's not asked about his contract situation, presumably because he's been told, again, don't ask about his contract situation. And he comes out with that line, it's my last year at the club. That, to me, feels very staged, very deliberate, almost like, ball's in your court, go for it.
It's interesting you say that about Mo Salah, because I spoke to someone at Liverpool maybe 2-3 years ago. He'd just done an interview with Vanity Fair, which is an unusual outlet for a footballer to speak to. And I said, look, that's Mo. He likes to project an air of mystique. He's very conscious of his brand, I guess, and he knows exactly when he says something, where it'll go, when it'll be picked up, and the timing of things is almost as good as goal scoring. He arrives at perfect time with the perfect quote. So the situation with Salah is, as we know, that he's out of contract in the summer, and Liverpool have had a lot of change at the club. We know that Jurgen Klopp left at the end of last season, but also Michael Edwards came back to the club, the transfer guru, as he was called, the director of football for FSG, Liverpool's owners. And also Richard Hughes came into the club from Bournemouth as technical director, sporting director. So complete change of transfer recruitment regime. They brought in Arne Slot on a similar level that Edwards and Hughes surprised a lot of people. Nobody really saw Arne Slot coming. It was going to be Xabi Alonso, it was going to be Ruben Amorim, but it was Arne Slot. So they work a bit differently at Liverpool. And the situation with Salah, it's tied in with Van Dijk and it's tied in with Trent, but they're all separate kind of elements. So obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold, we know, mid-20s, peak of his career, out of contracts in the summer.
Local boy.
Massive pressure on him to almost like come clean, really, because I noticed a long time ago that Steve McManaman and Michael Owen both kind of fell foul of the Liverpool fans a little bit by how they managed their final year of their contract. Steve McManaman ran his down and went to Real Madrid on a free. Michael Owen was sold to Madrid at the start of his final year because they didn't want to lose him for nothing. So Trent Alexander-Arnold is a similar situation to those, where local kid, the scouts in the team as they sing. Now, can Trent Alexander-Arnold go through a season by not telling the fans what he's doing if he's going to leave? That'd be really, really hard, and I think the fans would make it difficult for him. Virgil van Dijk, slightly different. He's had a bad injury 2-3 years ago, but since the cruciate injury, he's barely missed a game, Van Dijk. But he's a big earner. And Mo Salah, again, massive earner, superstar player. They turned down £150 million from Al Ittihad a year ago. It was September last year in the window. So on the basis that Liverpool knew it was a massive amount of money to turn down, but they felt that Mo Salah, for the remaining 2 years of his contract, would contribute. Now, the situation now is that, again, like Alexander-Arnold, he's entering the final year of his contract. He knows his value. I think he's only 32, so he knows that he could get another two-year deal at Liverpool. Mo Salah looks after himself very well. I think they get plenty of value at Mo Salah, but it would cost a lot of money. Whether Liverpool want to pay that money, the situation with Van Dijk is the same. You've got your 2 biggest earners who are out of contracts, and they're both on the wrong side of 30. So no talks have taken place. And the situation right now is that there's a kind of a bit of a standoff whereby Liverpool would like him to stay, but they don't want to pay too much money for him to stay. But they would, they'd accept him leaving. As unpalatable as it is, they'd accept Mo Salah leaving because, from a business perspective, he's in the wrong side of 30. Arne Slot hasn't come clean as to what he wants to do yet, but I'm pretty sure Arne Slot would like Mo Salah to stay in the team. Mo Salah would probably like to stay at Liverpool because it's Liverpool, one of the biggest clubs in the world, Champions League football, big money, but he knows that he could get that wherever he plays. If he runs his contract down, there'll be all sorts of offers for Mo Salah, even at 33 as he is next summer. Saudi Arabia will be there again. He's from Egypt. That is his part of the world. It's the Middle East, and the challenge you've got to Saudi Arabia for some players is not there for Mo Salah. He's an absolute icon there. But I remember I was in Saudi Arabia during the World Cup, and I went over to Saudi to do something on Newcastle, And I was speaking to people in Saudi Arabia, and at the time, obviously, it was the World Cup was on. It was Ronaldo, it was Messi, and I was told the two biggest players in Saudi Arabia by a million miles were Mo Salah and Paul Pogba, because they're both practicing Muslims. And I think that people kind of have to factor that in with Mo Salah, that he's a huge figure in that part of the world. So Salah, yes, he's playing a bit of chicken, because I don't think he's made his mind up yet, and I get the impression Liverpool haven't either. I think they're both waiting for each other to commit to something so they can then start a plan.
This season will obviously play have a big bearing on it. I mean, I was looking at his numbers since he last signed his deal 2 years ago. 98 appearances, 58 goals, 33 assists. I mean, there's absolutely no sign of him slowing down in his 30s, and as you say, he is 32. He's in absolute top physical condition. He looks after himself fantastically well, so he's not somebody you sort of think, well, you know, he's in decline, or there's any sign whatsoever that he's not going to be able to deliver for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years at the highest level.
I think that the problem with Salah and Van Dijk, as you rightly said, they're both the wrong side of 30, aren't they? Those three lads who are on that screen behind us, if Liverpool could do one of those deals, I think beyond any shadow of a doubt it would be Trent, wouldn't it? Because that is a player to build a team around. Now, Salah at some stage is going to have to leave Liverpool. Obviously, players always have to leave clubs eventually. It's going to be hard to do. I wonder whether Liverpool are looking at this situation and thinking, Klopp's gone, we've got a new manager who's going to take time to put his imprint on the team. There's going to be a little bit of churn in the squad. Is this the right time for transition? This is going to be a difficult decision anyway with Mo Salah when he has to leave, and then we're going to have to manage it in the right way. Whether they're looking at it and thinking it might not be the worst thing in the world.
Well, they did that with Sadio Mane and Roberto Firmino. You know, that Mane, Firmino and Salah were the big three, weren't they? And then gradually Mane went to Bayern Munich and was a disaster at Bayern, and you know that was perfect business by Liverpool. They got rid of him just at the right time. Firmino has gone to Saudi, hasn't done great. You know, Firmino was a great player for Liverpool. Didn't score a lot of goals, but he's key to that system. And they started gradually over the years replacing them with Cody Gakpo, with Darwin Núñez. There's no replacement for Mo Salah. Federico Chiesa is not a replacement for Salah. He's just is an insurance policy if Salah gets injured. But they've got a year to plan ahead, and it's a big time, and it's just really difficult for a club of that stature to have three such big players.
It's a bizarre situation.
Yeah.
Well, one other element I'd throw in here is that my understanding is that Trent Alexander-Arnold, he had a very good agent. He left him. I think the family are now looking after him, and this would be, you know, a massive contract that is going to require a lot of expertise. And I think the family have been quite demanding in terms of what they want for him. You know, they're looking after their boy. I can understand that. It's not a criticism. But I think if the club were dealing with perhaps his old agent or an agent of long standing, then perhaps they would feel a bit more confident they could accelerate things at the normal pace and not perhaps get themselves into a position where in January, my understanding is that the Real Madrid link is genuine.
Absolutely.
In that they have had a conversation about him. Obviously in January you can start talking to them directly.
It's a very good point, and I think you're right about the experience, because the McManaman and Michael Owen things are going on. It's 20 years ago now. It's a long time ago, and it's a lot of our viewers and listeners won't know the story. But basically, when you're a player at a club, if you're a homegrown player, the pressure on you to do the right thing is quite high. Now people say, well, football's a two-way street. The club has got to do the right thing by him, but Liverpool have schooled Trent Alexander-Arnold through his youth team days. Have given him his chance, and he's been a great player for them. Won everything he could win with them. So really, it's like, what does he owe Liverpool? Well, you speak to the Liverpool fans who have watched him come through, it would be very difficult for Trent Alexander-Arnold to go through this season without saying, I'm staying or I'm going. If he's going to go, he really has to manage it himself. He really has to manage that message now. And I think Liverpool as a club, again, they know that that's a difficult issue for Trent, but also they know there's not a massive market for him. Real Madrid obviously are there because Danny Carvajal's coming to the end, I guess, and Phil Mendes is a decent defender, but Trent is a very unique player. He's one of these players that some managers like, some don't. Klopp loved him. Gareth Southgate had to be convinced. He wasn't never convinced as a right back. So Arne Slot seems to be a Trent fan, but if he's not, would losing Trent Alexander-Arnold be that big a deal for Arne Slot? Conor Bradley has shown himself to be a very good prospect. I don't think losing Trent Alexander-Arnold as a player would be a massive blow for Liverpool, but I think the optics of it. Yeah. Losing as a homegrown player, especially if he goes for nothing, that is the big problem. And I think that is the real challenge they're in now, Liverpool.
Just from Alexander-Arnold's point of view, you mentioned the Real Madrid link. I often think when these teams come calling, it's like a sliding doors moment, isn't it? That sometimes you get one chance to go and play for a club like Real Madrid. They've obviously in favour of signing these big free transfers. We've seen with Mbappe how hard they worked and the way that they got him eventually. Trent is only going to be a free agent in his mid-20s once, and there's an ongoing situation, I suppose, with Erling Haaland. In that Erling Haaland and the people around him made no secret that he would one day like to play in Spain. Real Madrid, obviously the biggest club in Spain, but those opportunities don't come around very often. And now there's a situation where he may never get to play for Real Madrid because they've signed Mbappe, and he has to find a different route through his career. That it'd be very, very hard for Trent Alexander-Arnold, particularly if Liverpool aren't making the right noises about his deal and what he will become at Liverpool. If Real Madrid come calling and saying this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, for him to turn that down, because they just don't come around.
Yeah, I think the big thing is it's just the communication with the fans. I think the fans probably deserve that because he's a homegrown player. It's like, I don't think anyone could begrudge Trent Alexander-Arnold and move to Real Madrid. He's won everything at Liverpool. He has done everything. He's played for his boyhood club. He's won everything. He may stay and become the captain, but, Real Madrid, biggest club in the world. Sorry, but they're bigger than Man United, they're bigger than Liverpool, they're bigger than Barca. They are the biggest club in the world. They're absolutely massive. I just think if Trent is going to go, communicate. If he's going to stay, just communicate. There's too much kind of behind closed doors about this. I think sometimes players just say, look, this is the situation and this is what we're trying to do.
And a lot of the dynamic of it will depend on how Liverpool do this season, of course. I mean, if they've obviously started very well, if they were to have a serious tilt winning the league and two of those three sign, you'd say, well, okay, we'll take that. But if they fall away and then they don't qualify for the Champions League and they're losing, say, two of the three, then it becomes a completely different dynamic, doesn't it? And you sort of look at a club that is not losing a player from a position of strength. They're suddenly thinking, oh, actually, there's a couple who are jumping ship here, and where's that going to leave us?
And they've also got a question mark over Alisson Becker. Is he going to stay next summer? Is he going to leave? And can you imagine in one summer, Alexander-Arnold, Salah, Van Dijk and Becker all leave Liverpool for the biggest parts of their success? I'm not saying it'll happen, but that is a prospect that is on the line, and it could even happen in January, whereby a lot of uncertainty swirling around. They've left it too late on Trent. They have. The other two, I think they're managing it quite well.
And that's the point that I don't really understand about Liverpool, because from the outside, particularly, Liverpool are seen as quite a well-run club, aren't they? And squads churn and players leave, and it happens to everyone. But to let three players of such standing in your squad all get to within a year of your contract expiring in the same year, I think is mismanagement. I don't see how that has benefited everyone. We wouldn't be having the same discussion if they'd already tied Trent to a long-term deal and we were just talking about Van Dijk and Salah.
Well, I mean, you're right. Although if we drill down into the three examples, we'd say, well, Salah, is clever enough to run his deal down to this position himself because he knows his value. Van Dijk's had a very, very serious injury. You wouldn't be in his 30s. You wouldn't be renegotiating his deal during that period until you know where he's hit. And I've already explained the situation with Alexander-Arnold around him. So you can understand why although it all adds up to look like mismanagement. I think, in fairness to Liverpool, I think they've got three very specific cases that they couldn't have done a lot about. Yeah, it is a bit like a perfect storm.
I think with Van Dijk and Salah, they've managed it quite well. They're kind of keeping an eye on their decline, but there's no decline in Salah, there's no decline in Van Dijk, so they probably now need to make a decision. With Trent, they've left it too late. They should have dealt with it a year ago. Simple as that, because just over 100 days now till January the window opens. Then it's a free for all, because he could then speak to Real Madrid and agree a deal in the summer. They're not going to get anything back for him, so they're either going to get nothing for him or they give him a massive new contract. So they've kind of messed up on that one.